In a quiet village wrapped in fields of golden wheat, an old donkey stood beside a wooden fence. His coat had lost its shine, and his eyes, though kind, held the heavy mist of many years. For a long time, he had served the farmer faithfully, carrying sacks, pulling carts, and helping harvest under the sun. But the days of work had worn him thin. The farmer, once grateful, now muttered to himself that the donkey was too slow, too tired, too much trouble. One morning, when the sky was just beginning to turn lavender with dawn, the old donkey overheard whispers of being put down and no longer useful. He stood still for a long while after that. The wind brushed past him like a memory. Then, quietly, he made up his mind. If I stay, he thought gently, my days may end here. But if I walk, just walk, I might find something new. Perhaps, I can go to the great city. Perhaps I might even become a musician. It was a strange idea, but the kind that makes the heart feel young again. So the donkey slipped out through the pasture gate, the latch clicking softly behind him. He took to the old road that led past the fields and into the unknown, his hooves softly echoing against the path. With each step, he felt a bit lighter. The wind hummed a quiet tune in his ears. The trees swayed like sleepy dancers on either side of the road. And though his legs were tired, his spirit had begun to dream again. He didn't know what the great city looked like. He didn't even know how far it was. But for the first time in many moons, the donkey smiled. He was on his way. By the time the donkey reached the edge of a quiet woodland path, the sun had climbed higher, casting dappled light through tall branches. The road twisted gently, and just beyond a mossy stone wall stood a small cottage. Its garden was silent, save for a low, tired sigh. There, resting near the gate, lay an old hunting dog. His fur was faded with time. Once proud and sleek, but now dusted with white around his muzzle. His ears drooped softly, and his breath came slow and steady. The dog looked up as the donkey approached, blinking sleepily as if waking from a long, unspoken dream. "Good morning," said the donkey in a voice that was kind and unhurried. "You look like you've seen many sunrises." The dog gave a slow wag of his tail. "I have," he replied with a yawn, "but I fear my hunting days are behind me. My master says I am no longer quick, no longer sharp. He says my bark has grown soft." The donkey tilted his head. "Okay, then perhaps, friend, it's time for a new kind of calling." The dog blinked. "What kind?" "I'm heading to the city," said the donkey, "to become a musician." The dog gave a quiet chuckle. "A musician? And what would I do there, howl at the moon?" "Perhaps," said the donkey, smiling, but in harmony. The dog paused, looking up at the rustling trees and the open road beyond the gate. Then, with a quiet resolve, he stood and shook the dust from his coat. "I never liked cages anyway," he said. "Let's see what music we can make." Side by side, the donkey and the dog walked onto old soles, weathered but not worn out, hearts full of something gentle and new. The road led the donkey and the dog through a narrow village lane where ivy curled up the sides of old stone cottages. The afternoon light cast long, sleepy shadows as they passed a small house with blue shutters. Quiet sound caught their ears. It was the softest of meowsla, delicate and almost wistful. On the ledge of an open window sat a cat, her fur smooth as silk and her green eyes full of thought. She blinked slowly as she watched the two travelers pass. The donkey paused. "You looked as though you're thinking of somewhere far away." The cat gave a gentle stretch, her back arching like a wave. "I was," she said. "Once I sat in laps and chased the sunlight across the floor. Now they say I'm too old to catch mice, too quiet to stir the house. They speak of bringing in a younger cat, more lively, more useful. The dog looked up with a kind expression. But surely, grace, like yours, has a place somewhere. I have dreams, the cat murmured, of music, moonlight, and gentle things. But I am told dreams are for kittens. The donkey stepped closer. We are traveling to the city, he said, to make music and follow those dreams. You don't need to catch mice to be part of a song. The cat's tail swayed in thought. The wind carried the scent of lavender and something deeper possibility. With a soft leap, she landed beside them, paused, silent on the cobblestone. I'll come, she said, for the music and the dreaming. And so they walked on Donkey Dog and Cat beneath the warming sun, leaving behind walls that once felt like home but no longer heard their song. Asterisk, as twilight deepened, the two wandered into a clearing where an ancient willow stood. Its branches swept low, like tired arms folding around the earth. Jorinda, curious and unafraid, stepped forward to rest beneath it. The air had changed, warmer, quieter. It's a kind of quiet that feels like a memory. This place feels like a sigh, she whispered, like something forgotten long ago, still waiting to be remembered. Jorindel frowned. The silence unnerved him. We've gone too far, he said softly. There's no birdsong here. But Jorinda only smiled and began to hum. Her voice was gentle, like a lullaby. Sleep, O willow, in twilight's embrace. Hold my secrets in your lace. Dreams may drift and time may bend, but love will find its home again. As the last note faded, a hush fell once more. The branches of the willow trembled. Then came the owl. It landed silently nearby, watching. Jorindel turned to pull Jorinda away, but his feet would not move, not an inch. He was frozen. His eyes widened as Jorinda stood, confused. Jorindel, she asked, reaching toward him, but her hand never touched his. Instead, she shimmered, like dew evaporating at sunrise, and in her place stood a small, trembling nightingale. The owl flapped its wings once, and from the shadows came the old woman, her eyes sharp, her steps slow but sure. She did not speak, only gathered the bird gently into a golden cage. And just like that, she was gone. The willow sighed, above, and Jorindel moving, unblinking, watched as the love of his life disappeared into the dark. Asterisk Jorindel stood alone beneath the willow, his breath shallow and caught between waking and dreaming. The world around him was suspended, caught in a stillness that didn't belong to night or day. He could not speak. He could not cry. Even the sound of his thoughts seemed hushed by some unseen spell. But his heart beat still, and in each quiet thump echoed one word: the golden cage, the old woman, the soft notes of the nightingale's final song. All of it played over and over in his mind, like a lullaby that had soured into silence. Hours passed, or was it days? Time had folded itself into something strange and slow, and then, just as suddenly as it had bound him, the spell lifted. Jor, and Dell gasped. The forest returned in waves, the wind, the birds, the creak of the trees. But she was gone. Jorinda, he whispered. His voice cracked with sorrow. He dropped to his knees beneath the willow, brushing his fingers across the soft earth where a shadow had once stood. He did not know how far the old woman had gone. He did not know what magic held Jorinda in that delicate cage, but he knew in the center of his soul that he would find her, and he would bring her home, with only love for a compass and dreams for a map. Jorindel stood, and the journey began. Asterisk Jorindel wandered for days through the winding woods, tracing every path the witch might have taken. Trees leaned in like old guardians, whispering secrets to one another. Still, none spoke of cages or witches or girls turned into birds. His heart grew tired, but his hope did not fade. One evening, as the sky turned silver with mist, he stumbled upon a small cottage nestled in a hollow between two ancient oaks. Ivy wrapped its stone walls like a memory, and a thin wisp of smoke curled from its crooked chimney. It was the kind of place that looked as if it had always been there waiting. He knocked gently on the wooden door. It creaked open on its own dot. Inside, it smelled of lavender and old parchment. Bundles of herbs hung from the ceiling. Candles flickered with golden light. And in the corner sat an old woman, not the witch, but someone gentler, her eyes kind and far away, as if she were always halfway in a dream. "You seek the girl?" she said before he could speak. Jorindel's breath caught. "She is with thee, one who steals voices," the woman says softly. "The witch of the glass hill, who traps songs and keeps them silent forever." He stepped closer. "Can she be saved?" The woman looked up and smiled. "Yes, but not by sword or fire, only by patience and love, and something few seek anymore." "What?" he asked. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small stone, shaped like a teardrop, qualing faintly blue. "A memory stone," she whispered. "Find the song she sang, the one she hummed beneath the willow. That is the thread. Follow it. It will guide you where light cannot." Jorindel held the stone close, and for a moment could almost hear Jorinda's voice, again faint, but real. He bowed with gratitude and stepped back into the forest, with the memory stone warm in his hand and his heart glowing just a little brighter. The forest ahead was no longer dark, but quiet, deeply, reverently quiet. The kind of silence that listens. Jorindel walked slowly now, guided by the faint warmth of the memory stone in his hand. Each time he neared the edge of doubt, it pulsed, gently, like a heartbeat, calling him forward. The trees here leaned apart, as if making way for something sacred. And then he heard it soft, distant, like a lullaby carried on the wind. Jorinda's hum. He froze, breath held. It was the same tune she had sung beneath the willow. "Sleep, O willow, in twilight's embrace." He followed the sound, careful not to step too loudly. Around him, strange things began to appear. Broken lutes hanging from branches, tipped, silver feathers scattered along the path, and leaves shaped like tiny harps. It was the path of echoes, the forgotten trail left behind by all the enchanted ones who had once sung their final songs. Birdsong tried to rise, but faltered, as if something farther ahead was draining music from the air. Jorindel pressed on. Soon he reached a glade where the light shifted strangely, colors bleeding together like watercolor dreams. In the center was a pool, still as glass. He knelt beside it, and when he looked in, not his reflection, but Jorinda's, she was curled within a golden cage, floating just beneath the water's surface. Eyes closed, wings folded. "Jorinda," he whispered, tears rising. But the moment he touched the water, the image vanished in its place. A path appeared woven from silver leaves, leading toward a mist-shrouded hill in the distance. The glass hill, the witch's home, and Jorindel heart full. Hands trembling knew the final part of the journey had begun. Asterisk, the path to the glass hill shimmered like moonlights spilled on water. Each step Jorindel took echoed not just in the air, but in his chest, like a drumbeat calling something ancient awake. Before him rose the hill steep, smooth and shining. No grass grew there. No tree dared root in that crystal soiled. It gleamed under the starlight, reflecting every shadow, every whisper, every memory. At the summit stood a towering blackthorn tree, leafless and crooked, like a frozen bolt of lightning. And behind it, the witch's keep. It looked like no home of brick or wood. It shimmered like glass itself, walls so thin they showed the swirling sky behind them, as if time were trapped inside. Jorindel stood at the base of the hill and touched the memory stone to his chest. It paused, once, twice, and then faded. This was as far as it could guide him. The rest of the journey would be taken, not with magic, but with heart. Asterix, with slow steps, Jorindel began to climb. The hill was slippery, and every step forward threatened to send him sliding back. But he held the thought of Jorinda like a flame in the cold, and with every slip, he rose again. Midway, his legs ached, his breath shallow, but he kept climbing. A single feather floated past him, gold and soft, a reminder, higher still, till he could see the tops of the forest trees far below, like a sea of green waves. And then, at last, he reached the summit. Before him stood the blackthorn tree, and beneath it, a row of cages, some empty, some with birds too tired to sing, and one smaller, gentler, holding a golden nightingale. Jorinda, sound FX, cage door, rattling faintly night. Air swirls a single note, like a tuning fork. Their eyes met, and even though her body was that of a bird, her gaze was entirely her own. Jorindel whispered her name. She sang, just once, and the whole hill held his breath. Asterisk, Jorindel stood motionless across from him. Inside the delicate golden cage, the nightingale, with Jorinda's eyes, had sung a single note, a soft, trembling sound that seemed to echo far beyond the glass hill. For a moment, time itself seemed to pause. Then, slowly, the other birds in the nearby cages began to stir. One by one, feathers fluffed, heads tilted, in the quiet air filled with small, broken songs, half melodies, forgotten lullabies, pieces of voices lost long ago. The glass hill was listening. Jorindel stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on the cage's door. But it did not open. No keyhole, no latch, just intricate golden vines locked in place. By enchantment, older than memory. Then he remembered the old woman's words, only by patience and love. He knelt and took the memory stone from his pocket. It no longer glowed, but he pressed it to the cage and closed his eyes, and softly, tenderly, he began to hum. It was the lullaby Jorinda had once sung beneath the willow. Sleep, O willow, in twilight's embrace. His voice wavered, but he kept singing, and then she joined him. A pure, clear note birdsong and girl's voice woven as one. The golden vines shivered. A crack formed in the cage door, glowing faintly blue. More birds began to sing, not caged, not trapped, just remembering who they once were. Sound FX, chorus of soft bird song, cracking glass magic, shimmering softly. And then, with the gentlest click, the cage fell open. Jorinda fluttered to the edge, and as her feet touched the glass, ground she became herself again. Eyes bright, hair glowing like moonlight, voice trembling with joy. They stood in silence for a heartbeat, and then, without a word, he reached for her hand. She didn't hesitate. Together, they turned toward the path that now shimmered down the other side of the glass hill, back toward the forest, back toward freedom. Asterisk, the sun had not yet risen, but the sky had begun to blush. Soft lavender melting into rose. Jorinda and Jorindel walked hand in hand down the quiet slope of the glass hill, each step lighter than the last, as though the very ground rejoiced beneath them. Behind them, the golden cages shimmered faintly, and then, one by one, vanished into mist. The curse had been undone. The spell, UNSPUN. At the edge of the forest, the great trees stirred, as if waking from a long slumber. Branches bent gently toward the returning pair, leaves whispering blessings. In the wind, they passed a stone where the nightingale had once perched. Now it glowed faintly, not with magic, but with memory, a reminder of love's quiet strength. When they reached the clearing where they'd first parted, The willow tree swayed softly its silver leaves, catching the first true morning light. Jorinda paused beneath its boughs, placing one hand on its bark. She sang softly, not for the world, but for the tree that had listened. Sleep, O willow, no longer alone. The tree sighed, a sound like rain over blossoms, and then, all around them, forest bloomed. Asterisk wildflowers opened as if greeting an old friend. The river sparkled with golden light. Even the air felt new. Jorindel turned to Jorinda. No more cages, he whispered. She smiled. No more goodbyes. They stood there as dawn unfurled itself over the treetops, washing the forest in warmth, in light, in peace, and somewhere, far away perhaps, in another glade, another dream the witch's glass palace crumbled into dust, never to steal another. Sung again. Sound FX, fading birdsong heartbeats, soft lullaby theme returning breeze through tall grass. The forest would remember, and so would we. Asterisk. The loyal heart once upon a time in a quiet village nestled between gentle hills. There lived a shepherd and his faithful old dog, Sultan. Sultan had served the shepherd for many, many years. Through sun and storm, over hill and valley, he had guarded the flock and watched over the homestead. But time, as it always does, had taken its toll. His back was bent, his eyes a little dim, and his teeth all gone that one warm afternoon while the golden fields swayed in the wind. The shepherd stood outside his cottage with his wife. "Hi," with a heavy sigh, he said, "Tomorrow I shall let old Sultan go. He's no good to us anymore." The words dropped like stones in the air. His wife turned quickly toward him, her hands on her hips. "He's given us his best years," she said softly. "We should give him peace in his last ones." But the shepherd shook his head. "He's toothless now, no good to scare off thieves. We can't keep him just for memories." What they didn't know was that old Sultan lay nearby, his ears still sharp, his heart still listening. And now it ached that night, under the hush of twilight. Sultan slipped away from the cottage and padded slowly toward the edge of the forest. There, beneath the old moon-dappled trees, lived his longtime friend, the wolf. The wolf was wild and clever, but loyal in his own way. When Sultan shared the shepherd's cruel plan, the wolf's eyes narrowed with thought. "Don't worry," he said with a grin. "I have an idea." And with that, the forest seemed to listen. "You see," the wolf whispered, "every morning the shepherd and his wife take their child into the field. They place the little one under the hedge while they work. Tomorrow, you lie beside the child as if you're guarding it. I'll come running and pretend to steal the baby. Okay? You chase me, catch up, and rescue the child." Sultan blinked. "And then?" he asked. "Then," said the wolf, "they'll believe you saved their child, and they'll keep you forever." Sultan's tail wagged gently. It was a strange plan. It felt right. It felt right. And so, beneath the stars, the two old friends parted. Dawn came gently, with honeyed light spilling across the fields. Just as the wolf had said, the shepherd laid his child under the hedge and walked into the meadow. Sultan curled beside the little one, as if keeping watch. Then, like a shadow through sunlight, the wolf dashed from the woods. He scooped up the child lightly, carefully, and ran. The shepherd and his wife cried out in terror, but Sultan leapt to his feet, his old bones forgotten. With all the strength left in him, he chased his friend through the tall grass, barking with fury at the edge of the forest. The wolf paused and gently set the child down. Sultan ran up, gently grasped the little tunic in his jaws, and trotted back, tail wagging. When the shepherd saw them return, his face broke with awe. "Old Sultan," he said, falling to his knees, "you saved our child, His wife was already sobbing with joy from that day forward. Sultan was treated like a king. He had the finest scraps, the warmest blanket, and the softest pillow near the fire. No one ever spoke again of his old bones or his missing teeth, because now Sultan was not just a shepherd's dog. He was the hero of the field, and in the warm stillness of the afternoon, stews with peace in his heart, knowing he was still loved. Asterisk, asterisk, a loyal heart and a clever plan asterisk that evening. While the stars quietly emerged, one by one, above the sleepy countryside, old Sultan lay under the oak tree near the shepherd's cottage. The shepherd's harsh words still echoed in his ears. He's no use now. Tomorrow shall be his last day. Sultan's heart was heavy not with anger, but with quiet sorrow. He had guarded this home faithfully, herded sheep through rain and snow, and kept watch through countless silent nights. And now it seemed his time had come to an end. But Sultan was not alone. Somewhere deep within the twilight forest lived his old friend, the wolf. Though they had once walked different paths, they had shared many a talk in the days of youth when the moon hung low. Secrets passed between the trees like whispers. Sultan, with slow but steady steps, made his way to the edge of the woods, following the scent of pine and the music of rustling leaves. There, beneath a crescent moon, he found the wolf resting on a bed of moss. The wolf looked up, his amber eyes gleaming. "What brings you out so late, old friend?" he asked, his voice deep and calm like distant thunder. And so Sultan shared everything: the shepherd's plan, the ticking hours, the ache of being forgotten. The wolf listened closely. Then, with a thoughtful growl, he leaned forward. "Let's turn this misfortune into fortune," he said with a sly smile. "Tomorrow, when your master goes to the fields with his wife and their child, I will come." Atan's ears twitched in concern, but the wolf raised a gentle paw. "No harm will come to the child. I will only pretend to steal it. You, my friend, will chase me and bring the child back safely, okay? Then they'll see your worth again. They'll never doubt your loyalty." The plan sounded strange, but it was clever, and it held the glimmer of hope. So, beneath the starlight, two old companions made a promise. Not one born of trickery, but of care for a dog who had given everything, and for a friend who would not let him be cast aside without a chance. Asterisk, as Sultan returned to his place by the cottage door, the moonlight shimmered softly across his worn coat. Tomorrow, he would remind them all that even the oldest dog could still guard with love, that loyalty does not fade with age. And somewhere deep in the forest, the wolf waited, ready to play his part in a plan born not of mischief, but of friendship. A morning in the fields the next morning arrived with a soft, golden light stretching across the hills. The shepherd and his wife, unaware of the quiet plan woven under starlight, walked out to the fields with their little child nestled in a warm blanket. It was a peaceful place, the kind of morning that smells of fresh dew and wildflowers, with bees buzzing lazily in the sky wrapped in soft blue dot, as usual. They laid the baby gently in the shade of a leafy hedge, just near the edge of the field. The child gurgled happily, waving tiny fingers at the clouds above and nearby. Old Sultan lay down beside the child, his eyes watchful, his ears alert. He was not the young guard dog he once was, okay? But his heart beat strong with purpose. Asterisk, then just as planned, the bushes nearby stirred. The wolf emerged, silent as a shadow, his movements smooth and careful. He crept close to the child, gently picking it up in his jaws by the blanket, careful not to cause a whimper. Then he turned and slipped away toward the trees. Sultan waited only a second, then sprang to his feet and gave chase, barking with a voice that rang across the meadow. "Stop, thief, bring that child back." Asterisk, the shepherd and his wife turned in horror to see their little one being carried away, but behind Loyal Sultan was bounding after them, faster than they had seen him move in years, through grass and wind, over stones and roots. Sultan ran with the strength of 100 memories, the years he had served, the nights he had guarded, the love he still carried in his old bones. And just at the forest edge, the wolf dropped the bundle gently to the ground and vanished into the trees. Sultan arrived moments later, panting, trembling, but victorious. The child was safe. He nudged the baby's blanket gently with his nose, then laid beside it until the shepherd reached them. The shepherd scooped the child into his arms, tears in his eyes. He looked at Sultan, his once forgotten dog, now a hero once more. "Old Sultan," he whispered, stroking his shaggy head. "You brave soul, you've saved our child. You've saved our hearts." Asterisk the wife knelt down, hugging the dog gently, and kissed his forehead. "You will never be forgotten again. From this day, you'll live with us in warmth, comfort, and peace." And so, on a cushion beside the warm hearth, with a belly full and dreams sweet as spring, Sultan would find not just rest but honor. For in that one moment of courage, he had reminded them all that love never grows too old. A hearth of honor that evening, back at the cottage, the glow of the fireplace spilled golden light across the walls. Old Sultan lay curled on a thick, warm cushioned one that had once belonged to the shepherd himself. It smelled of old wool and kind memories. His belly was full from the feast the shepherd's wife had prepared: roasted meat, soft bread, and even a splash of warm milk. He didn't understand everything they were saying, but the kindness in their voices told him more than words ever could. "He's not just a dog," the wife said, brushing crumbs from her apron. "He's family." Asterisk Sultan opened one eye, then the other. The room was cozy. The air smelled of supper and pine wood and safety. The child, wrapped in soft linens, lay in a crib not far from him, breathing in tiny, peaceful puffs. The shepherd gave Sultan a soft pat on the head. "Rest well, old friend. You've earned this night 100 times over." Sultan didn't move. He just blinked slowly and let his head rest on his paws, heart steady, body tired, and soul full of quiet joy. Asterisk outside, the forest whispered softly under the stars. But for once, the wolf didn't come to prowl or howl. He was somewhere in the dark woods, thinking, remembering, because even in the wild places, stories of loyalty carried weight, okay? And the story of Old Sultan had already begun to echo beyond the village, back in the warmth of the cottage, okay? Sultan let himself drift into dreams, not of chasing or guarding, but of running through meadows as a pup, of gentle hands in soft beds, and of the deep peace that only comes when you know you are loved. Asterisk. The wolf's whisper, asterisk, far beyond the quiet cottage, under a veil of moonlight. The wolf prowled alone through the woods. His paws made almost no sound. His breath came slow and steady, but something stirred within him, not hunger, not anger, something deeper. He paused at the edge of a stream, where the water whispered secrets to the stones. "Old Sultan," he murmured, his voice low and thoughtful, "you truly fooled me." The wolf had thought loyalty was just a story told to pups who didn't yet understand the wild. He had thought Sultan would play along, turn his head, and let the sheep disappear under the moonlight. But no, Sultan had chosen his path, faithful, even when forgotten, brave, even when old asterisk the wolf sat down beneath a silver-barked tree and looked up at the sky. The stars twinkled like stories yet to be told. He remembered the way Sultan's eyes had glowed, not with fear, but with purpose, not with rage, but with quiet strength. And he remembered the cudgel. Oh yes, that wooden stick had landed well, but more than that, he remembered the silence afterward. How Sultan hadn't chased or mocked or gloated. He had simply turned away, like a soul who had nothing to prove. The wolf sighed, long and low. "Perhaps," he said to the stars, "there is honor even in the world of men." Asterisk, he would not forget Sultan. Not because of a trick, but because of truth in the stillness of the forest. A new seed of respect had taken root. Not all strength was measured in teeth and speed. Sometimes it lived in loyalty, in an old dog, curled on a cushion by the fire. And for once, the wolf felt, still, the warmth of the hearth. The night deepened. Stars drifted lazily above the cottage roof. Inside, in the quiet glow of the hearth, old Sultan lay curled on a thick, faded cushion. It had once been the shepherd's. Now it was his. And for the first time in a long time, his old bones did not ache from the cold. His ears twitched softly with each pop from the fire. The warmth soaked into his fur, into his soul. Every breath was deep, slow, and content. From the other room, he could hear the soft voice of the shepherd's wife humming a lullaby to their child. It was the same child Sultan had saved from the wolf. He smiled gently to himself, not out of pride, but peace. Asterisk. The door creaked open. The shepherd entered quietly, carrying a wooden bowl filled with warm broth and bits of meat. He knelt beside Sultan, placing the bowl down with care. "There now, old friend," he whispered. "You've earned this." Sultan lifted his head, eyes cloudy with age, but shining with gratitude. The shepherd patted his head with a slow, tender hand. "I don't know why I ever doubted you," he said, and Sultan, with a slow wag of his tail, forgave him completely. No words were needed, only warmth, trust, and the quiet bond that had always been there. Asterisk. Outside, the wind softened. The trees swayed like they, too, were listening to the music of a home wrapped in gratitude. Sultan licked the last drop from his bowl, then rested his head on his paws. The fire cracked again. The house creaked like it too was settling into sleep, and in that simple moment, old Sultan, once nearly cast aside, had everything he had ever wanted. Not because he fought, not because he tricked, but because he stayed true. Whispers in the wind that night. The wind wandered over hills and meadows, carrying with it a story. The tale of a loyal old dog who had nearly been forgotten. But stories, the good ones, always find a way to travel. They slip beneath doors, drift through open windows, and settle in dreams in the forest under the ancient trees. Even the animals began to murmur. The squirrel, curled in her nest, whispered to her kids, "Remember, little ones, loyalty is more than strength." The sleepy owls blinked slowly on their high branches. The elder one spoke softly. "That old dog, Quixote heart, is sharper than teeth." And down by the creek, where moonlight kissed the stones, the frogs croaked in soft chorus, telling Sultan's tale to the stars. Asterisk. Back in the shepherd's home, all was still. Sultan slept with the steady breath of someone who knew, finally, he was safe. Not just fed, not just sheltered, but seen, valued, loved. Asterisk. The wind pressed gently against the window, almost like it, too, wanted to rest beside him, to curl up on the rug and dream of peaceful days and old friends and second chances. In the deepest hour of the night, as the stars wheeled slowly overhead, a quiet hush fell across the land. Sultan stirred only once, ears twitching at the sound of an owl's lullaby in the woods, a lullaby for a faithful friend, for a tale well told, and for the gentle night that held them all. The visit beneath the stars, the moon had risen high above the treetops, casting a silver glow over the sleepy world. Sultan lay curled on a soft cushion by the fire, the warmth seeping into his bones like a lullaby. He dreamt not of battles or wild chases, but of quiet fields, kind voices, and the steady beat of a heart at peace. Suddenly, there was a gentle tap at the door. Not loud, not urgent, just curious. Asterisk, it was the wolf, but tonight, there was no anger in his eyes. Only the soft shimmer of old friendship, flickering like candlelight. "I've been thinking," the wolf said, lowering his head humbly. "Maybe I judged too quickly." Sultan didn't rise. He simply looked at the wolf with calm, knowing eyes. "I was hungry," the wolf continued, voice quieter now. "But I forgot what mattered more." There was a long pause, silent, peaceful. Then Sultan wagged his tail once, slowly, not out of obligation, but understanding he didn't need words. In that quiet hour, forgiveness drifted between them like pollen in the air, weightless, real. The wolf sat beside him, both of them gazing at the fire, not speaking, just sharing space. Asterisk, outside, the stars watched in gentle silence. The world didn't need to rush, its past didn't need to shout, and the night simply embraced them both. Two old souls, two quiet hearts, and one warm fire between them. The cat's evening song while Sultan and the wolf shared their quiet moment by the hearth. Someone else stirred in the shadows of the house. It was the old three-legged cat, her tail flicking slowly as she padded toward the windowsill. She'd been watching the stars return one by one like lanterns, strung across the dark velvet sky. Perched on her favorite cushion, she began to hum. Not a melody anyone else would know, not a song from books or memories, but a tune born from purrs and breath and time itself. Asterisk, she sang to the garden, to the wind, to the beetles and the barley. She sang for Sultan, for the wolf, and for the silent trees who listened kindly to every note. Sultan turned his head slightly, ears flicking at the sound. He smiled not with his mouth, but in the slow blink of his eyes. She still remembers that song. He whispered to the wolf. The wolf nodded. It always made the night feel softer, and so it did, as the fire crackled and the shadows grew long. The cat's little lullaby filled the home with something more powerful than words. Peace, warmth, belonging, even. The wind slowed to listen, and somewhere in a dream not far away, the shepherd and his wife slept soundly, hearts wrapped in the quiet harmony of creatures who had long since become family. The cat's song drifted upward, beyond the roof, into the clouds, and higher still, until the stars themselves hummed back. The promise beneath the stars, night had deepened. The moon floated high above the fields, casting silver light across the quiet home where Sultan slept. His old bones rested on the soft cushion gifted by his master, his breath slow, steady, and content. But sleep had not come to the wolf. The wolf sat just outside the little wooden fence, his yellow eyes reflecting the starlight. He gazed toward the house, toward the warmth, the laughter, the safety he had felt only for a fleeting moment. The wolf, though wild and used to solitude, had tasted something different this night. A bond, a belonging, a quiet dignity in being. Trusted as the wind rustled the leaves above him, he whispered softly to the earth, "I will not be the same." He remembered Sultan's eyes, not fierce or judging, but kind and tired and full of stories. "I will not be the same," he said, again, firmer this time. And in that moment, the wolf made a promise, not with words or howls, not with howls or scratches in the bark, but deep in his heart, where old pain had lived too long. He would protect this place from afar, silently. He would let the sheep sleep without fear, would no longer hunt the easy prey, but live in the wild with honor, like the dog who had shown him mercy. And so, the wild became something gentler. Asterisk, with one last look at the window where Sultan now dreamed, as the wolf turned back into the forest, not as a villain, not as a shadow, but as a guardian. The stars blinked above, as if they too acknowledged his quiet vow, and the night held its breath not in fear, but in wonder, for even the wildest heart can change. And sometimes it only takes a friend. Asterisk, asterisk, by the hearthside asterisk in a quiet, time-worn cottage nestled at the edge of an old village. There lived a kind-hearted old woman. She had silver hair like cobwebs in sunlight, and hands wrinkled by seasons of work and love. One cool evening, she decided to make a humble dinner dish of warm beans to comfort her weary soul. She knelt by her hearth, where glowing embers whispered of old stories, and reached for a handful of straw to light the fire. The straw sizzled gently under the flame. And soon, the warm flicker danced across the stone walls like candlelight on water. Asterisk, as the old woman poured her beans into the pan. One little bean slipped from her fingers unnoticed. It bounced softly to the floor, landing beside a scorched straw that had drifted down from the hearth. Just then, with a pop and hiss, a coal from the fire jumped out and landed beside them. Asterisk, startled. The three strangers blinked at one another in the glow of the fire's edge. "Where do you come from?" asked the straw, brushing the soot from its brittle frame. "I leaped from the fire itself," replied the coal, still glowing faintly red. "It nearly consumed me whole." "I too escaped," chimed in the bean, who was still catching its breath. "If she had noticed me, I would have been stewing with the rest." The straw gave a shaky sigh. "Me, I barely escaped a fiery end. 60 of my kin were taken, all fed to the flames." A moment of silence passed between them. Not long ago, they were just bits of kitchen cast-off. Now, they were survivors united by chance and the whisper of danger. "What shall we do now?" asked the coal, her voice flickering like a candle in wind. The bean gave a thoughtful hum. "Perhaps we journey far from here, away from fire, away from pots and pans. We've been given a second chance. Let's not waste it." The coal nodded. The straw, though nervous, agreed. And so, the three unlikely companions began their strange and gentle journey into the world one spark, one husk, and one humble seed. Walking side by side under the moonlight, the path of shadows and stars, the night was calm, with silver stars twinkling like quiet thoughts overhead. The moon, full and kindly, watched as the three companions, straw, coal, and bean, made their way past the sleeping village. Straw, ever light and fluttering, drifted gently in the wind. Coal rolled carefully, warm but cooling with each moment away from the fire. And bean, small and plump, bounced along softly like a pebble over moss. They passed old fences, spring fields, and a barn where sleepy cows sighed in their slumber. The air smelled of earth and distant hay. Not a soul stirred, only the occasional hoot of an owl or the flap of a bat's wings above. Asterisk, "I've never been beyond the kitchen before," said Bean softly. "It's a strange, wide world. Everything looks so big," whispered Cole, peering up at a tree that reached into the stars. "And so peaceful." Straw swayed as he walked. "Peaceful, yes, but unpredictable too. Still, I'd rather wander through shadows and stars than burn in smoke." The friends agreed. After some time, they came upon a patch of wildflowers, glowing pale in the moonlight. They paused to rest beneath the mushroom cap, where dewdrops clung like tiny lanterns. Asterisk, "This journey might be longer than we thought," Bean murmured. "But we're not alone," said Cole kindly. "We have each other." And so, they rested. Not just their limbs, but their fears as well. The night carried on around them, quiet and deep, and somewhere not far ahead, the next part of their journey waited with a riddle, a ripple, and a crossing. The murmuring stream, asterisk, by morning, the trio awoke to the sound of a nearby stream, burbling gently like a sleepy lullaby. The sun had only just stretched its golden arms across the land, and the air still held the cool hush of dawn. Straw fluttered upright with the breeze. Coal warmed a little in the sunlight. and Bean stretched her little arms as best she could and smiled. "I think I hear water," said Bean with curiosity. They followed the soft sounds through dew-laced grass and tall wild clover until they arrived at a quiet brook, its surface shimmering with morning light. Birds sang from the branches above, and tiny insects danced above the ripples. The stream wasn't wide, but to the three friends, it seemed like a great river. No bridge, Cole noted, and no stepping stones. "What now?" Straw, always quick with ideas, tilted thoughtfully. "What if I lay myself across? You both could walk over me like a bridge." "That might just work," said Bean. "But are you sure?" "I'm light and long," Straw replied gently. "Okay, and this water looks calm. I want to help." And with that, Straw stretched himself carefully across the brook. His golden body lay flat, one end on each bank, like a narrow wooden plank. Cole, being bold despite her flickering nature, was the first to step on. She tiptoed cautiously over Straw, but halfway across, she glanced down. The water rushed quietly below her. It sparkled. It moved. Suddenly, Cole felt her warmth return to much. Fear gripped her. I can't move," she whispered. "It's too high, too fast." Straw, sensing Cole's fear, began to tremble, and then crack. Straw snapped in the middle, falling into the brook. Cole tumbled after him, and the two vanished into the water with a hiss. A ripple and silence. On the far bank, Bean gasped. "Oh no." She hurried to the edge, but dared not follow. Instead, she sat on the mossy bank, trembling and alone. The stream whispered gently, carrying the last bubbles of her friends downstream. But Bean would not give up. She wiped her little face, sniffled softly, and whispered, "I'll keep going for them." And so, with her tiny heart beating brave and true, she turned and looked ahead. The forest waited, and fate still had one last stitch to sew. The tailor by the brook. The brook continued to murmur its secret songs as Bean sat quietly on the mossy bank. Her heart was still heavy, but her spirit, though small, remained unbroken. She looked at the gentle ripples in the stream, as if hoping to see Cole and Straw rise again, laughing and warm. But the water gave no reply, only the soft hush of nature's lullaby. Just then, on the path beyond the trees, came a sound. Slow, steady footsteps, boots worn by distance and dust. A figure approached, whistling low and tuneless, yet somehow comforting. A young tailor with a kind face and tired eyes came into view. He carried a small sack on his back, and in his pocket, the faithful tools of his trade, needle, thread, and hope. He paused by the brook, sighing deeply, and sat down upon a flat stone near the edge. "What a long road it's been," he murmured to himself. "No work in the last town. Perhaps the next will be kinder." As he reached into his bag for a crust of bread, his eyes fell upon something peculiar, a small bean sitting on the grass, trembling slightly. He blinked. "Well, now, what have we here?" Bean turned her little face up to him, her voice barely a whisper. "Hello." The tailor chuckled softly. A talking bean. "I must be dreaming or hungry." Bean explained everything about the old woman's fire, her brave companions, and their journey across the land. He told him of the straw bridge, the brook, the fall, and the silence that followed. The tailor listened with gentle eyes and a patient smile. "And now I'm all alone," said Bean, "and I laughed too hard when they fell. Something inside me broke." The tailor leaned forward. "Let's have a look." Sure enough, there was a tiny split along Bean's side, like a seam torn by sorrow. "I believe I can fix that," he said kindly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a fine black thread, with the delicacy of someone who'd sewn hundreds of cuffs and collars. He threaded his needle and gently stitched the split back together. Bean winced once, but the tailor's hands were warm and careful. When he finished, the seam was smooth and tight, though the thread was black. It suited her somehow, a reminder of the journey, of the laughter, of the sorrow, and of survival. "There you go," he said, smiling. Bean flexed slightly and beamed. "Thank you. I feel whole again." The tailor stood, brushing off his coat. "Keep going, little Bean. The world still holds wonders for you." And, with a nod, he walked on his boots, carrying him down the winding road. Bean looked at the water once more. Then, turning her face to the forest path ahead, she whispered to herself, "For straw, for coal, I will go on." Asterisk, and off she went, and to a world still waiting. Asterisk, asterisk. The meadow of memories, asterisk. Bean wandered gently along a narrow forest path that slowly opened into a sunlit meadow. The sky was soft blue, with clouds like cotton sails drifting above. Flowers swayed lazily in the breeze, daisies, bluebells, and golden buttercups, each glowing with quiet life. Here, the world seemed slower, softer. Bean paused at the meadow's edge, taking in the peaceful hum that hung in the air. This, she thought, must be a resting place for thoughts too heavy to carry. She sat near a tuft of clover, brushing her tiny leaves along the petals. A warm voice drifted down from a sunflower above her. "You're not from here, little one." Bean replied gently, "I'm just passing through." The sunflower tilted ever so slightly. Most who pass through carry a story. "What's yours?" And so Bean told it again, slowly this time, about the kitchen hearth, the old woman's pan in the narrow escape, about the brave coal and the wise straw, about their short journey together in the sorrowful brook. The flowers listened as the breeze passed through them like breath. A few dewdrops shimmered beneath their leaves. "You've been brave," said the sunflower kindly. "Even laughter can hurt sometimes." Bean nodded, her tiny black seam catching the sunlight. "Miss them," she whispered. "You carry them in your roots now," said a daisy. "Every step you take is part of their journey too." There was a long silence as the meadow swayed. Then a new sound, the soft padding of paws in the grass. A small fox approached, his red fur glowing with the sun. He tilted his head, curious. "Are you lost?" "No," said Bean softly. "Just ... remembering." The fox sat beside her, his tail curled gently. "That's important too. The world forgets things too fast." And so, for a while, Bean sat with the fox in the meadow of memories. They listened to the wind tell stories through the flowers. They didn't speak much, they understood. Asterisk, when the sun dipped lower in the sky, the fox finally said, "If you're still searching." The forest beyond this field is where many go to find peace. Bean stood up slowly. "Thank you." The flowers leaned toward her, and the sunflower said, "Softly, carry us with you." Bean smiled, bowed low, "Okay," and continued on her path, this time with the voices of the meadow blooming gently in her heart. Asterisk, the bridge of echoes, asterisk. Bean's journey led her to a quiet glade where a small wooden bridge stretched over a shimmering stream. The sun had dipped lower now, painting the sky in lavender and peach. Fireflies flickered in the shadows like tiny lanterns guiding her path. The bridge was old, worn smooth by time and weather, its wood sun-bleached and dappled with moss. As Bean stepped onto it, the boards creaked gently beneath her like an old voice whispering stories from long ago. Each step echoed softly through the forest. She paused in the middle, letting the sounds of the stream beneath lull her thoughts into stillness. Water splashed against smooth stones, creating a song that seemed both ancient and new. Then she heard it, faint voices, not alarming, not startling, but familiar. Like laughter she once knew. The bridge, it seemed, carried not only feet, but memories. Straw's voice came first, gentle and warm. "Be careful, little bean. Life is light, but it can burn." Ka's voice, proud and fiery. "Boldness is beautiful, even if the world doesn't always understand it." Bean closed her eyes, her seam glinting in the last rays of light. She let the memories flow like water around her, comforting, not sorrowful. She spoke aloud, not expecting anyone to hear. "I wish you were still here. I wish we could have made it further." And then, something unexpected. A shimmer of light passed across the stream. A small cluster of glowing mushrooms lit up along the opposite bank. One by one, like stars, taking their place in the night. The bridge creaked once more, not in warning, but in invitation. Bean understood this moment wasn't about returning to the past. It was about carrying it forward across the bridge to the world ahead. She stepped softly onward, crossing the last plank. Behind her, the wind sighed gently, and the echoes faded like ripples in the water ahead. The forest thickened, the light dimmed, but Bean felt steadier now, as if her roots had grown stronger, just from remembering. Asterisk, she whispered into the dusk. "I will carry you both, always." And the night carried her forward into its quiet arms. Asterisk, the lantern keepers. Tree, asterisk, beyond the bridge. The path wound deeper into a whispering forest. Shadows stretched long and gentle. The air smelled of moss and moonlight. Bean followed a winding trail until she reached a curious cedar tree, taller and wider than any she had seen before. Its bark shimmered silver in the low light, and hanging from its branches were dozens of tiny lanterns, glowing softly in amber and blue dot. Sitting at the base of the tree was a figure small, bundled in patchwork robes, with eyes like warm candlelight. "Welcome, little wanderer," said the figure with a voice as soft as wool. "I am the keeper of the lantern tree." Bean bowed politely. "It's beautiful," she whispered. The keeper smiled. "These lanterns hold moments of warmth. A laugh by a fire, a hug on a cold morning, a song shared between friends." He gestured to one swaying gently. "This one," he said, "belongs to a brave Cole who leaped into the world before she was ready, but with a heart full of fire." He pointed to another, twinkling with soft golden light. "And this belongs to a straw, light and gentle, who dreamed of carrying others, even when he was so small." Bean felt her seam tingle. "They were my friends," she whispered. "I know," said the keeper kindly, "and they live in you." He plucked a new lantern from his satchel, plain and unlit. "This one," he said, handing it to her, "is yours. It will glow as you walk forward, not because of what you've lost, but because of what you carry." Bean took the lantern with quiet reverence. It was warm to the touch, like a memory still alive. "Thank you," she said softly. Keeper nodded. "Now go, little one. The world still has stories for you to walk through." Asterisk, Bean tied the lantern gently to her side. It flickered to life, casting a golden glow around her as she walked with every step. The forest grew more peaceful, as if it, too, listened for the soft sounds of healing, and as she disappeared into the trees, the keeper leaned back against the trunk, smiling beneath the lantern light. "Safe travels, Bean," he murmured, "and thank you for remembering." The whispering ferns, the path beneath Bean's little feet, was now carpeted in fern, each frond soft and cool like velvet under the moonlight. As she walked, the ferns swayed as if in greeting, their tips brushing her gently like old friends returning from a dream. She paused to catch her breath, the warm lantern swinging by her side. Its light revealed the shapes of the forest mossy stones, its curling roots, and little mushrooms that glowed faintly in the dark. Suddenly, a gentle hush passed through the air, a whisper, then another. Bean tilted her tiny head. It was the ferns. They were whispering, "Little bean," they sighed in 1,000 leafy voices. "We know the sorrow in your heart. We've known loss too, but we also know that every fallen leaf nourishes the roots of what comes next." Bean knelt beside them and listened closely. The whispers were not sad. They were soft, tender, and filled with a kind of ancient comfort. A particularly large fern bent toward her spoke with a voice like wind through silt. "You are stitched together, not just with thread, but with memory, okay? And memory is a strong fabric." Bean smiled gently. "I missed him," she said quietly. "We know," said the fern, "but they are still with you, little one, in your light, in your laughter, in your brave steps forward." The lantern beside her shimmered, pulsing once with warmth. Bean bowed deeply to the ferns. "Thank you," she whispered. "Walk gently, little bean." The fern sighed as she stood, "and may every step carry peace." Asterisk. And so she did. Deeper into the forest, beneath the soft breath of the leaves, holding tightly to the little lantern, now glowing brighter than before, with each whisper from the earth. She felt a little more whole. The bridge of moonlight as Bean wandered farther. She came upon a silvery stream that whispered softly as it flowed between mossy banks. The water shimmered in the moonlight, glistening like stars had fallen and melted into the earth. But there was no bridge, no way across. She sat quietly at the edge, remembering the little brook where everything had changed, where she had lost straw, where coal had vanished with a hiss. The memory sent a tremble through her stem. Her eyes welled, but she did not cry. Instead, she closed her eyes and whispered into the wind, "If you can hear me, just one more time, show me how to go on." Suddenly, the wind stilled. Trees hushed, and across the stream, a path began to form, not of wood, not of stone, but of moonlight. A glowing arc stretched from one bank to the other, soft and glimmering, a bridge made of dreams and gentle hope. Bean hesitated, her heart fluttering. Then, with a deep breath, she stepped forward. Each step was met by a soft glow, as if the moon itself kissed her feet. The bridge held firm, though it shimmered and rippled like silk in water. Halfway across, she paused, looked down into the stream below, and saw not water, but reflections. Straw, smiling and warm, cold, bold, and flickering. They weren't gone. They had simply passed into memory, the place where all stories live forever. "Thank you," she whispered. The wind answered, brushing her face with invisible fingers. She crossed the bridge slowly, gently, until her feet touched the other bank, and as she turned back, the moonlight bridge faded, becoming part of the sky once more. Asterisk. The journey was not over, but tonight, Bean had crossed the greatest river one of loss, memory, and courage. Asterisk. The garden of second chances. Asterisk. When Bean stepped off the moonlight bridge, she found herself in a new place, lush and green, like a forgotten corner of the world. Its flowers she had never seen before glowed faintly in the twilight. Trees bowed as if in welcome, and the air smelled of lavender, earth, and soft rain. She walked gently, her little feet barely disturbing the moss beneath her. This was no ordinary garden. It felt sacred, woven together by memories and dreams. As she wandered, she came upon a circle of mushrooms, lit by the glow of fireflies. In the center stood an old gardener. His face was wrinkled like crumpled parchment, yet his eyes were kind and sparkled like stars. He held no tools, only a wooden bowl filled with tiny seeds. "Welcome, little bean," he said in a voice like warm tea. "Few make it this far." Bean tilted her head. "You know who I am." He smiled. "I know all who come seeking new beginnings. This is the garden of second chances." She stepped closer, and he knelt down, placing a single seed into her hand. It pulsed faintly, as though alive with quiet hope. This seed will grow, he said, but only if planted with patience and tended with kindness. Bean looked at the seed, reminded her of Straw's laughter and Cole's brave leap. She gently pressed it into the soft soil beside her. Immediately, Kana's soft sprout unfurled a tiny green shoot, glowing with gentle light. The old gardener nodded. Kana, even the smallest soul can start anew. Kana, Bean sat beside her sprout and felt something she hadn't felt since her escape from the hearth. She felt peace, and for the first time in a long time, she smiled. As stars blinked into the sky above the garden. Bean curled beneath a broad mushroom cap. The sprout beside her, she had found her place for now, a resting place for the heart. And so the night deepened softly, like a lullaby.